Hello everybody and welcome to your 24th Allegro 5 tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to be learning about bounding box collision. Okay, so what bounding box collision is essentially collision between two boxes or two rectangular areas, right? So if I look at if I create this and we have one square over here and we have another one over here. Basically, bounding box is gonna check to see if they overlap each other, and if they overlap, then therefore there is a collision, and then we do something upon collision. Okay, so to start off this tutorial, this is the code from last tutorial, so if you guys don't know, but what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to create another bitmap. And we'll just name this player 2. And you can load a different bitmap or the same one. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so what did I do wrong here? Oh, I forgot the semicolon. Okay, or semicolon for the Americans or whatever. Okay, so anyways, I loaded in a second player image, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a bitmap region player 2 uh 32 by 32, and I'll put the position at 200 and null. So we won't be able to move this player. We're just going to be using this for collision. So at the top of our program here, what we're going to want to do is make a boolean called collision, and we're going to take the x position, the player's y position, and we'll put the enemy's x position and the enemy's y position. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna check to see if if they're not colliding first, and if they are colliding, then we use an else statement to see what they do, right? And right here I'll just put in width and in height. And normally you might want to check for a player height and enemy height in case they're different, but in this case they're both the same width and height. So we're going to say that if x plus width is equal to ex, or earns less than ex, or x is greater than ex plus width, or y plus height is less than ey, or y is greater than ey plus height. Therefore, there is no collision. And else, we have a direction variable, right? Well, we should have a direction variable. Yeah, we do. So we will put that direction in, and we're going to be modifying the player's x and y position, so we want to put a reference to it. So right here we'll put direction. Okay, so we're gonna say that if direction is equal to, well, we don't have I'm not sure if we can recognize that yet because it's before that. So down is gonna be equal to 0 anyway. So we'll say that if direction is equal to 0, then we do y plus equals the move speed. What's the move speed? The move speed is equal to 5. So you could put the move speed in the parameters if you want. Yeah, I'll just put in the parameters. So I'll say y plus equals move speed. So we're moving it in the, no, y minus equals move speed. So we're moving it in the opposite direction that the player will be moving at. So I'll say else if direction is equal to 1. What's the next one? Down left. So we'll say x plus equals move speed. Else if direction equals to 2, x minus equals move speed. And else if directions equal to 3, then y plus equals move speed. Okay? So I never went over what was going on over here. So what's saying is saying if x plus width is less than ex, or one of these things is statements is true, then there's no collision. So if we go back to paint right now, so that's our player and this is our enemy right here. Okay, so we say that if this, we're checking for x2 because the far right of the image is the x2, which we learned about shapes in earlier on tutorials. So we know that if we say that if x2 is less than the x1 of the enemy, then there's no collision, right? Uh, and then the next thing we say if the x1 is great, or we say if the x1 is greater than the enemy, therefore there's no collision. And if the y2 is less than the enemy's y2, there's no collision. And if the player's y1 is greater than the enemy's y2, then there's no way there can be a collision. So we're just checking if the box is around the outside, anywhere around the outside of the box, anywhere on the screen, right? And then if those statements aren't true, then that means there is a collision and it's interacting with the box or with the enemy, and therefore we need to do something. Okay. So in this case, we just move the player in the opposite direction, so it makes it look as though the object is solid. Okay. So what we're gonna do, so we have our collision in there, and what we're gonna do is I'll put it down here. So, or we could put it in the updates in our regular timer, since that's where we modify the position and that's what we'll be calculating for. So we could put it in there. So we have the player's x position, the player's y position. The enemy's x and y is 200 by 200. The width is 32 by 32, but if you want to, you could say get bitmap width if you wanted to. But I'm not going to go through that. So it's 32 by 32, and the direction is that, and we got our move speed. Okay, so we check for collision right there. So when our player hits the enemy, it should be, when our player hits the other player, it should be solid, and the player shouldn't go through it. Collision must return a value. Oh, cause I said this to a boolean. So you could say that if this is whatever, then you could say return false, and then you could have another one that says you say else return true or whatever, right? You could say if there's not a collision, then you can cut this out and return true right there. You wouldn't even have to do an else statement, because if return false happens, the function ends. It doesn't execute the rest of it. And if return false doesn't happen, then you could return true. And then you could say if collision equals true, then blah 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 blah. So yeah, since we made this a boolean, then we will do that. So let me just undo this. So let me copy this code. Cut this. And we'll just put return true. And so we just need the x, the y, the ex, the xy, so we don't need the direction in there. Okay, so if we scroll down to our code, and the only reason why I'm showing you this is that I'm showing you different ways you can handle it. So I'll say if collision. And with the other method, if you don't want to do this method, you could just set it to void, and you won't run into any problems. So what we're going to say here is that if we have a collision, then we do this code right here. So if there's a collision between the two, then if direction is equal to 0, then we move it according to the move speed, etc., etc. So if we run this program, so if we move our player and it hits the enemy, it doesn't move through the enemy, and therefore the enemy is solid all around. And you'll notice that there's a little bit of space between it. That's because it interacts between the different boxes. So the square is around the player over here, and the square is over around the player over here. So their squares are indeed interacting. So if you really want to be more precise, like when the player is actually indeed touching the enemy, then you might want to you'll check out the next two tutorials on how to handle that. Or you could just make the bounding box a smaller bounding box on the player, so it looks like a better collision. But essentially, in 2D games, this is a good enough collision. So that is it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and bye.